ATF whistleblowers were promised oversight hearings into the ATF policies and procedures over a year. Now, thanks to the intervention of John Boehner, affectionately known to my readers as Old Yellowstain.
This isn't a question.
Look, this is part of the question.
Well, get to the meat of the question, please.
Okay. Again, is Mark here?
No, he's not. He left.
Ah, I see. All right, cut to the question then. Forget this. What are you going to do when Obama wins? You've avoided that question the entire day. Everything else is whistling past the graveyard. What are we supposed to do when Obama wins, tears up the rule of law, and destroys the legitimacy by the election that John Fund predicts will be stolen? What are you going to do? That's my question. Anybody want to answer that one?
I did not predict the election would be stolen. I said it would be if people in this room didn't do what they needed to do. Well, I'm not the gun expert here. There are other people who can answer that. But I do not believe this election will be lost. And there's lots of people in this room who know my track record and who know my ability to prognosticate. Of course it's possible Obama can win re-election. If you do your job, it will not happen.
What you do is the same thing you're supposed to do, which is keep on working and stay active.
You do the same thing we started doing in 1976 when Jimmy Carter came in, very anti-gun president, and had a huge Democratic majorities in Congress. You stay involved in the political process and do the best you can, and things worked out, and Carter's proposals were defeated, and things got better. Just because things are bad at a particular time doesn't mean you give up.
And let me bring you back to the discussion of the sheriff that I pointed to this morning. The sheriff is the top cop in his county. He's the only elected cop. If you have a sheriff that understands the constitutional limitations of the federal government, he's the guy that can interpose himself between the feds and us. So go get the right sheriffs elected.
Question?
Actually, I have multiple questions, so I'll just get in line again. But this is one for the lawyers. One of the things that we've noticed in VCDL is the tendency of the gun banners, governments, and whatnot getting into other areas of law to strip your gun rights away. A couple of examples of those are leasing facilities to private companies to perform government functions, and then having the leasor or the private company ban guns from the leased public facility. The use of mental health laws that you have seen used to strip people of gun rights. Any changes in liability laws that would cause them to ban your firearms, and basically even trespass laws. And I was wondering if there's any intention or capability on the part of the legal community that's pro-gun to expand their experience base to take on those challenges as well.
Okay, the very first Nordyke case back in 1996 that was filed, that case was actually prosecuted for the folks who became my clients, the Nordyke, the gun show, by a law firm from Florida here, Joe Wargo's firm took that case on and won it at the Ninth Circuit. And it was a case, exactly speaking to your point, the county of Santa Clara inserted in their lease provision. Now what happens is the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds is owned by the county, but then the county hires or subcontracts out the management of the fairgrounds to a company called Fair Management Corporation. When their lease came up for renewal for continuing to use the fairgrounds, they inserted a lease provision that said you cannot hold shows or you cannot hold any events at the fairgrounds that involve the display or of guns or ammunition. That became Nordyke 1, which was actually a victory on commercial speech grounds. And Joe Wargo, I don't know if you're here or if you've come or anybody here knows of him, but he's a Florida lawyer who won that case. Second Amendment Foundation and Calguns Foundation is currently sponsoring a case right now called Tixiera versus Alameda County, that specifically deals with the county of Alameda trying to use zoning restrictions to basically prohibit gun stores from opening. They have enacted silly rules. They've even violated some of their own rules for getting the variance or the use permit on that. And we regularly consult with real estate attorneys who sometimes don't necessarily like to wear an NRA patch or wear an NRA bumper sticker on their BMW or their Mercedes, but they're out there, and I can pick up the phone and talk to them, and they let me know what I need to do to help fight some of these rules that aren't directly on point, but do get into land use restrictions and leases and stuff like that. So yeah, that's definitely something that we do.
I'm not a lawyer, but I do help run a litigation nonprofit. I'll tell you about mental health. It's an issue that's very, very important to us. It's a place that's heavily abused in the Northeast, and we are looking at it. We're going to continue to look at it. It's going to take a long time to work it out, but we are looking at it. It's going to be very important up in the Northeast. Thank you.
As to the property restriction, Florida Carry is actively looking at a few cases with several different municipalities that are using that type of rule or regulation in regards to their arenas or parks where they lease the parks out to private organizations. We are looking at those. We have not made any decisions as to which case would be an appropriate one to go forward on at this time. As to the mental health question, we actually filed a case this past week up in Duval County in Jacksonville that deals with the failure of the sheriffs in Florida to return firearms that are seized after a person has been Baker Acted under our mental health law. And we actually have an Attorney General opinion from 2009 that says the sheriffs in Florida are obligated to return those firearms. The sheriff in Duval County has decided to ignore that Attorney General ruling, and we have filed a suit both to enforce the Attorney General ruling and also under the violation of our preemption statute.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Obviously, this election is most about the economy with 8% unemployment, $16 trillion in debt, things like that. So my question is, how do you convince people that issues such as gun rights are just as important as the economy or other issues like that are taking the lead in this election?
You can't convince them that it's as important, but what's really great is I love close elections like this, because on the gun issue, we can move 2% of the electorate in any election. So in an election that's a blowout, we get taken for granted. In an election that's really tight and close, like this one looks like it's going to be, we are going to be the margin of difference. If Obama doesn't get elected, it's gun owners that did it.
Your most important job is to convince people to get off their duffs and vote and not stay home. And one of the ways to do that is, regardless of what issue you want to talk to them about, guns or something else, you can say, look, we know this president says one thing when he's campaigning and does something else in office. We know his character. We know that he's told the Russian president, Medvedev, after November, I will have great flexibility. Please convey that message to Vladimir Putin. Well, what is his flexibility going to be used for? It's going to take all of the things he didn't take down off the shelf during his first term because they were politically unpopular or controversial, and he'll try to ram them through using executive orders and whatever else he can do. Everybody knows that's what Obama's about. All you have to do is remind them, what in the world was a president of the United States doing telling the Russians and Putin, I will have more flexibility? In the gun issue, I know exactly what that means.
In response to that question also, how you move them is you ask them, no matter what their issue, do they want the government more involved or do they just want to be left alone? That's the one factor, and that's in Grover Norquist's book. Thank you.
Yes, your question, sir?
Yeah, how do I get a hard copy of John Lott's talk on the danger of the gun-free zones?
We can get you an audio copy because tomorrow, if you bring a thumb drive and you take it over to this desk at the end of the session, they will give you a free recording of of all the sessions. And the other thing is I have asked him for a copy myself already, and I'm happy to pass it on.
Oh, that's great. I'm not in any hurry. I just need to use it in an article.
And I would like to use it as well, so that's why I've already asked for it.
Okay,
but we will get it out to everyone.
You want to take my name or something?
I'm a personal friend of John Lott's, and he wanted to convey a message to you because he had to leave. John's message is, if you just go to Google and put in John Lott and gun-free zones, you'll turn up a column on foxnews.com that he wrote on this, and you can print it out and distribute it at your leisure.
Thank you.
Was it this particular talk? Because I've got bunches of papers by him.
This talk.
This talk. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes, sir.
That would be a thumb drive with made in China with malware on it, right? Check. Second question. This is for the national organizations. One of the things that's really bothering us in Virginia at the federal level that we could use your help with, Gun-Free School Zones Act, attacking that in some way, shape, or form, and then federal lands that weren't taken care of under the change made to the national parks, i.e. in Virginia, we're looking specifically at the Corps of Engineers have a lot of land that's used for recreation that is not open for gun carry. And then in tiny little bit in the last tail corner there of Virginia, there's a couple of TVA facilities. And if there's anybody here from Tennessee, you have a lot more dog in this fight than we do. So you might want to talk about that too.
So I can't comment directly on what we would do around school zones, but I can tell you that it's a politically charged animal, so it's going to have to be fought in very narrow ways. The good news is the ATF seems to be dumb enough to try to enforce that in certain strange ways in other states, and we're hoping to see if we can leverage that for an opportunity instead of trying to do it kind of, if you will, directly up. Of course, the problem being that the fight is going to be about whether the zone or the school is the sensitive place, and that also means that we've got to get carry secured first.
I haven't heard of them actually enforcing that law except as a rider to an additional charge on another.
It does get enforced in California, not at the federal level. There's a state equivalent, and that one gets enforced, actually. That's correct. But as I said, the ATF looks to be dumb enough to try to enforce it in a couple places, and I don't really want to talk about where. But if they would be willing to enforce it or threaten to enforce it, those would be the kinds of places that would make a far more compelling set of plaintiffs, which is the key issue set here. Okay?
I'm also looking at legislative solutions. Myself and some of the other board members from VCDL went in to see Senator Coburn and his staff, and that was about a year ago. So,
the one problem with the political solution is that it exempts carry license holders, and that makes the political juice, shall we say, narrower to fight for it. I'm just being, practical about it, right?
Correct. So.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Can you hear me now? I was recently reading on a forum where a newly issued elementary school textbook clarified that the Second Amendment was only for militia. Do any of you organizations have a plan or program to go in to be sure that what the next generation is taught is correct so we don't have to fight this over again?
Well, we're working on stuff all of the time. Yes, Dave.
You've identified something really important, and it is not being done now. So those of you who are looking for a good long-term project to work on, doing textbook review at the K through 12 level would be extremely important, and it has the advantage of, in a lot of jurisdictions, the school boards have lists, or whoever picks the textbooks listens to public input. There are a few large, Texas and California do statewide adoptions, and so publishers who want to sell their book nationally want to make it sure that it gets accepted in Texas. So Texas is an especially good leverage point to go to their body, which adopts the statewide textbooks, and say this book doesn't meet Texas standards of quality because it describes the Second Amendment in a one-sided and an incorrect way. So that is a wonderful project for volunteers to take on, and it's something you can make a big difference on in your state.
I'd just like to say all politics is local politics. Run for school board, candidate for Will County Board in Illinois. Thank you.
Very quickly, there was one thing David failed to, or omitted to mention from his response that I think is worthy of mentioning, which is David recently finished the first Second Amendment casebook in publication in the U.S. It's currently in publication. That will be the background for bringing up a new generation of lawyers with, let's say, some level of respect for the Second Amendment. When I went to law school, the position that the Second Amendment was about anything other than the National Guard was a black helicopter crackpot theory. So I think that's an important part of the answer to your question.
Yes. It's $138 for the hardbound on Amazon. I checked. Yes, sir.
I realize this may be a case of violent agreement, but I heard a few different comments that seemed contradictory, and I think you can tell from my shirt that I'm not going to forget about 1791 or 1775. But there were some comments about we're not going to get to a situation where there's no federal regulation, no ATF, and then there were other comments about I'm not going to accept that. And I'm on that camp. I'm not going to accept that, and I just want to hear a little bit of reconciliation on that. That what do you all think about? No, we won't accept it, but we understand that there's going to be incrementalism because that's how we got here. It took 100 years.
Well, you can choose not to accept it, but you're not being a realist because there's no way to get rid of all of it. The question is to get it down to a manageable level where our rights basically can be exercised. And you may have to, pay a fee to have a permit. You may have to go through a background check. You may have a few little things like that, but you'll be able to have that gun and be able to use it when you need it. And that's about probably as far as we're ever going to get. That is a very, very big improvement to where we were a decade ago.
Just a follow-up. I would say yes in my lifetime. I agree. But I think we should aim high. That's where I'm going.
We all do aim high, but we're all being realists about it as well, because it's really all about winning. And I'm going to give the example: if you throw the kitchen sink at things, legislators, judges, they don't want to deal with it. So you got to be narrow in your focus and take a piece at a time. Remember, we didn't lose our gun rights all in one shot. The other side chips away at it one piece at a time. We're going to win it back one lawsuit at a time.
Just a quick point about that. The world we live in today only has 8 million people licensed to carry. Okay? Half the American population can't carry a firearm by population. They're in may-issue states or no-issue states. Changing just that, moving that number to 16 million, will change dramatically the political and operative environment we're all working in. So what GRPC looks like in 2015 is very different. It will look a lot better if we don't have more Obama appointees on the bench in 2015.
Look at Arizona's laws on constitutional carry and see if you can start a Citizens Defense League in your state if you don't already have one, and try to get Arizona's law into your state.
Yes, sir.
I had a question for Dr. Lott. He's already left for the evening. The question I had is Dr. Lott was pointing out that with very few exceptions, almost all multiple victim massacres occur in a gun-free zone, or supposed gun-free zone, where self-defense is restricted, but criminals, not respecting rules of law, really don't care. First question is does a private enterprise, say a mall, by posting no carry allowed, are they creating a public hazard? And if so, what culpability do they have if, God forbid, something happens?
My interns looked into that this summer, and the answer is the truth is there's no real law on that one way or the other. It's very clear that if a business like a shopping center creates a hazard or negligently fails to remove, so if you have a bunch of banana peels on the floor of the grocery store and somebody slips, that's an easy case. And likewise, if there are, say, known dangerous conditions, like the parking lot is very icy at the shopping mall, and then somebody slips because the shopping mall didn't bother to chip away the ice, those are straightforward. This is you could analogize to that, but it's not a perfect analogy because it's not that the shopping center knew of the hazard or had some role in creating it, but you could argue it, but there is no case law on the subject. It's indeterminate at this point.
And now it's not case law, but Wisconsin, when they passed their carry law in 2011,
they do allow. Yeah, every state allows private property owners to one degree or another to restrict carry on their property, and so that would be an argument if it were then a lawsuit that somebody said, oh, I went to your shopping mall where you can ban guns or some other place where you can ban guns, and I was injured because some criminal came in and attacked me and I couldn't have my gun. The fact that the state legislature has authorized this private entity to ban guns there would be an argument in favor of the courts not holding the property owner liable.
The Wisconsin carry law included within it certain liabilities and immunities.
Yeah.
Liabilities if a property owner did not permit carry and did not provide security, and immunity if they either allowed carry or provided adequate security.
Right, and so that's one of these things where probably the legislative fix is the correct approach to this, is to because courts will defer on lawsuit issues to whatever the legislature says or the rules for lawsuits.
Have we seen any action similar to this in any other states other than Wisconsin so far?
I don't know, but Wisconsin, because it's so new, is sort of the latest, version 3.0 of carry laws. So, but that's one of the dynamics that always happens is carry laws get enacted with whatever restrictions are necessary to get them into place in the first place, and then we use the slippery slope in a positive way to continue to improve them. And I think that's one improvement that's worth looking at in a lot of states.
We have time for a couple more questions, probably about 2. Go ahead, sir.
Hi. My major concern has to do with the fact that even within the gun rights community, I've noticed frequently the unwillingness to go on a serious attack because of arguments I've just heard here tonight that we can only go one step at a time. One of my major concerns is the fact that we should be challenging the legitimacy of certain agencies. So we have a Constitution that has 7 articles. Excuse me. We have 7 articles. I can't find police powers listed anywhere there. We have to start challenging that and say these people cannot be enforcing these things because they don't have a legitimacy. They do not have a legitimacy, and we need to start going on the attack. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We have to go on the attack, and we have to get rid of these agencies because they are entirely unconstitutional, and we'd better start doing something, or we're going to find ourselves in a hard tyranny.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead, sir.
I've noticed that there's a situation involving some doctors' offices, medical treatment organizations that have been putting on their questionnaires, asking questions such as, do you own a gun, or does your family member own a gun?
Do you want to know something? If you turn around just a little bit and look at the gentleman at the other direction who is right there. He's going to be talking about that tomorrow morning. So I'm going to just have everybody wait, and Tim will tell you all about that tomorrow morning.
My question will be answered tomorrow.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. But you can catch him tonight at the reception. Yes.
All right. If Obama got in and appointed 2 more Supreme Court justices, that's something I don't want to think about. But would the direction to be still bring legislation for the Second Amendment, knowing that it would fail in the Supreme Court?
Well, hang on a second. There's 2 realities. The reality is that our 5 are likely to survive an end-Obama term. So even though Obama might appoint 2 who would likely replace 2 people who would already have voted against us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But there is a risk that one of ours has a motorhome accident. Okay? That's not a good thing. The litigation strategy may have to change slightly because it's not really the Supreme Court that ends up being much of the problem. It is that, for example, all the federal circuit courts of appeals are now balancing more and more toward Carter, Clinton, and Obama appointees. Because if you get a panel of 3 judges from each of those 3, the likelihood of us losing 3-0 is quite high. Okay? But that would mean it would be certain things that we may not be able to be as aggressive as we otherwise would be on. So that's kind of the real impact. But the likely case is that all of the major issues that we wish to bring back to the Supreme Court would still be able to be brought back. The problem would be that we may have issues where we lose them all the way, which makes it harder for the Supreme Court to take them, instead of having situations where, like Kerry, we're losing in one place and winning in another to create that split.
Thank you.
Can I just
Yes,
make a
remind
comment
everybody.
and not a question, so people can start moving off if you want to have the time. A lot of the comments were made here that were very energetic are towards the idea of what we do in resolutions, because this is your and my conference, and when you have something you think needs to be done, that's what a resolution is, that we can move things in your direction, and all resolutions have to be written and on the desk by the meeting tonight, by the reception tonight, so that the resolution committee can go over them early in the morning, and then we can talk about them more tomorrow afternoon.
And the resolutions are at the registration table, and they are the yellow pieces of paper. If you go and you ask somebody at the registration table, they will hand you one of the resolutions, and you'll get them tonight. Got it? I want to thank everybody. We will now adjourn until tomorrow morning, and the reception is in the